Good morning, everyone. This is Jeffy Kennedy, also writing as Jennifer K. Lambert, authors of epic fantasy romance. I'm here with my first cup of coffee. Ah, delicious. Today is, say it with me, people, it is Friday. Woohoo! Friday the 13th, June 13th, 2025. And if you're on video, you will have glimpsed my new tattoo. I posted it to my socials too. But it's the purple rose from the cover of Never the Roses. And I'm just thrilled with it. Isn't it pretty? I love the way it looks. I have a couple other tattoos, but they are on my shoulder and on the back of my neck, and I can't ever see them. So this one I got on my forearm, so I can see it, and it makes me happy. So it's been kind of an uneven week for me. Although I've heard that I am supposed to get my edits back on A Rose in the Mirror coming in next week. It sounds like I still have work to do on this book. Um, I, yeah, just looks like I'm going to be working on it pretty hard in the next couple of months. And it is what it is. I don't know why this book is being weird for me. But I've been listening to the audiobook of Never the Roses, and these audiobook narrators are so great, and I'm really just loving it. So it's one thing about having a book that is hitting as big as Never the Roses is, because I'm feeling a lot of pressure on book two. And I think a lot of authors talk about that, that I think you have to realize that you can't recreate the same book and probably not even recreate the same impact. I remember Elizabeth Gilbert after Eat, Pray, Love. She told this story that somebody came up to her and asked her how it felt to have already reached the pinnacle of her career, and the rest would be this inevitable downhill slide. And she talks about, like, how are you supposed to answer a question like that? But yeah, I don't feel like that's the case for me, and it's definitely a situation where I'm wanting to continue to push myself, and so it's the life I've chosen, right? The career I've chosen, which is awesome in many ways and difficult in many ways. And so I want to talk a little bit today about the perils of the publishing business, of how it can be a very difficult business for emotionally and for self esteem and for ego and so forth, and the perils of looking for external validation, full stop. Um, I feel like this is probably part of the human struggle, is this how do we feel good about ourselves? And the looking for external validation or gratification to make us feel better is what leads us to all sorts of damaging behaviors, right? Like eating sweets or salty things to salve hurt emotions, um, shopping. There have been times when I've been feeling insecure, and having the power of purchasing something made me feel better, right? But that's problematic, right? Because accumulating a material thing doesn't actually help fill whatever hole is inside of me, right? And we joke about that sometimes. We make jokes about these psychological theories that we know are true, like that these awful people are doing awful things to try to fill the hole inside. We have all of this political stuff going on in the US, which is also very distracting. Tomorrow is the big No Kings demonstration. If you can't go in person, support online. Uh, I think everything that we can do to resist is really important. That's part of why I talk about it on here, that we must resist this slide into fascism, that we must resist. Do you see how cleverly I embedded this in my message? Sorry if you were only here for the publishing talk, but, we can't allow the kind of violence that's going on, the right's attempt to criminalize the left, to arrest Democratic senators, Alex Padilla. Um, but I do think that however you resist is fine. And one of the most important things we do is talk about it openly and talk about the fact that this is not acceptable. But that whole inside, that fear, that's driving a whole lot of what's going on, right? There are people in this country who are feeling afraid and insecure, and that's being capitalized upon by the religious right uh, and the fascist right, that they think that getting rid of immigrants will somehow make their lives better, will make them feel better. Uh, and this is something human beings do because it's much easier. I'm putting that in air quotes now, to look for external solutions to an internal problem, right? The internal problem is dealing with our own thoughts, our own emotions, our own needs. Uh, we look to other people to love us, which is hugely important. You all know that I talk a lot about my friendships, my family. We need those people around us to love us, but they still cannot fill in that ultimate need inside that can really only be handled by dealing with our own internal thoughts and feelings, dealing with ourselves. There's a reason why it's such a powerful trope in books where the protagonist or the villain or what have you has to look in the mirror. That in order to pass through a trial, that they must look at themselves in the mirror, and it's a special mirror that shows them honestly, right? Shows them themselves. And this is what we all must do metaphorically, right? We all must face our real selves, no matter how much we try to find things to avoid doing that, to avoid looking in the mirror. So instead we look at our phones and we look at the TV and we look at movies and we do these things to avoid being quiet with our own thoughts. And yeah, I mean, that's just part of being human. But the thing is none of those things ultimately solve the problem. And one thing that happens with this external validation, and I think it shows up a lot in the writing world because writing is so much a solitary activity where we are alone with our thoughts and our characters and our stories so much that it feels like a natural thing to do to seek out external validation. The problem is that no amount of external validation, like all forms of external validation, they are never going to assuage that need inside. It will temporarily. That's all of these things are temporary fixes. You eat a cupcake and you temporarily feel better, right? Someone says something nice about your book and you temporarily feel better. But then what happens is soon that glow fades, and then you are right back to where you were with this thing that you didn't really address, right? You only put a band aid on it, but the wound is still there, right? And so the ways that I see this manifest in the writing world is people look for ways to prove that their books are good, that their creation is good, and that they are therefore good. And so one thing that I think is super important for all creators to do, probably, I'm sure it's probably true since we're all human beings theoretically, uh, but is particularly true of writers, is to separate yourself from the book, right? You are not your book. And I really work hard at this, and I don't always succeed. I try to say my book won an award instead of I won an award. Um, my book is successful instead of I am successful. My book is a flop versus I am a flop, right? We are not our creations. They come from us, but they are not us. And so I feel like even that simple language can be incredibly useful to remind ourselves that our books, and I was in my author group chat, right? We were talking about this, like our worst selling books. Why are they our worst selling books? It it's very difficult for us to tell. It's just like, for whatever reason, those books just don't hit and never hit. And we were talking about how you deal with them. How do you, uh, you know, stop marketing them or whatever? Just let them go. Um, your best selling book and your worst selling book. Is there really a difference between them? So I think that, and this is helping me sort out some of my own thoughts too. So hopefully you're all okay with this ramble. So separating those things, first of all, right? You are not your creation. Use the language to remind yourself, because words are powerful, right? We're writers, so words are powerful. Say, my book did this, not I did this. Um, my book got a bad review, not I got a bad review, right? They are not reviewing you as a human being, even though like some awful troll type reviewers try to make it seem that way, like saying, oh, you're an awful person and this kind of thing. It's like, no, 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 you don't actually know me as a human being. But you can say that, you think my book is awful or my characters are awful, and that's your prerogative. But it doesn't reflect on me as a human being, right? So then the other piece of this is, when we talk about not looking at your reviews, it's really good to not look at your positive reviews as well, because it all gets in your head, right? Reviews are external validation. Looking at your Amazon ranking is external validation. Looking at how much money your book is bringing in is external validation, right? And I had a friend a long time ago who, as a newbie writer, and she had problems. I mean, she had a lot of things going on in her life, and I don't dismiss that, right? It's, emotional stuff is really hard to deal with, and she was dealing with emotional stuff and with some physical problems, some chronic illness, and it sucked. It was really difficult, but she had was very successful with her first book, or moderately successful at the time. It felt very, and certainly when you're a newbie, that like sudden jump can feel like very successful because you have no context. And a slight aside, one of the things we've been talking about is, like this whole move the needle conversation that people have, talk about a lot. Well, I did this marketing, but it didn't move the needle. And one of the reasons why this metaphor doesn't work, right, is because it implies that there is some sort of gauge, right? I envision like this success gauge that's kept with all of the other weights and standards, right? And there's a needle, and everybody gets their own needle, and you get to see like how far the needle goes. And maybe there's like, I almost want to draw this, right? The red zone, the yellow zone, the green zone, like you're a loser, you're mid-listy, okay, oh, you're a fabulous success. And then there's like a little bit of purple way down at the very bottom that's like, you're a phenom. um like, can we just stop talking about moving the needle? It's there is no gauge. There is no standardized gauge for success or for money or whatever it is. Uh, if you are gauging by what other people in your profession or your genre are doing, it's still not productive, right? Because they are not you, and they are not writing your books, right? Your books are your books. They're their own thing. You don't want to be looking at what other people are doing, because there's a reason that there is this saying, comparison is the thief of joy, right? You are always going to find someone doing better than you are, or that you perceive that they're doing better than you are. Okay, so back to my friend. Sorry, trying not to get off topic. So because she knew nothing and we knew nothing, her friends, it seemed like she was very successful. Looking back, she was, I mean, probably, it was great for her first outing, but it wasn't amazing. But she felt amazing. And she really fed off of that external validation. She was always on social media looking for mentions of her book and eating up everything that anyone nice said about her. And when that, or about her book, I'll see, caught myself, when that inevitably trailed off, she began to starve for that external validation, right? She began to starve for the attention and began seeking it out. And there are things that we pin our ideas on that we think those are what what will make us happy. When we're newbie writers, we think getting an agent is going to solve all of our problems. We think getting that first book published is going to solve all of our problems. We think, I don't know, making a certain amount of money, which a lot of times we don't even know what it is. We just have this idea that, oh, when my book's a bestseller, then it's going to solve all of my problems. And I'm going to give you the tough love spoiler here. None of these things will solve your problems. All they do is create another set of problems because you're a human being, I'm a human being, and we get to have problems. That's what life's about. We also get to have joys, but we tend to focus on the problems, right? So we think that certain things will give us a boost, like I hear people saying, I just need a win right now, and this thing will feel like a win, so it will make me feel better about these other things in my life that are going wrong. And I feel like I could say this to all of you honestly, that longtime listeners know that my life has been difficult, right? I'm trying not to get weepy about it, but my husband is slowly dying from Parkinson's disease, and my mom is widowed for the third time and having a hard time. Hi, Mom. And, you know, there's a fair amount of pressure that I'm dealing with, right? Taking care of the people in my life. And a friend of mine said to me, uh, she said, it's so interesting because so much of your life is shit right now, but you're having the best professional career of your life. And it's true. And I have thought before, that this is compensation, right? If I was not having such a great professional year, that it would be much more difficult for me to deal with these other things that are problems, that are struggles. Um, so there is something to that, but you have to not pin this on specific kinds of external validation, right? Seeing your book displayed in the window of the bookstore. We get this from movies and TV, right? Because that's always like the culmination of the show. At the end, like they walk by and they see the huge display of 11 billion copies of the book, which, when was the last time you really saw that many copies of one book in a bookstore window? Um, I don't know if I've ever seen it. And if it happened, it would be with something that's a huge bestseller, right? This like 0.01% of books published. But we think, like either the protagonist sees their book in the window or the antagonist, or it's like goes by and sees that the person was successful. So we have this image in our minds that like, oh, when my book is in the bookstore window, 11 billion copies of it, so it just fills up the window display, then I will be happy. Um, and it's just like all the others, like when I get an agent, then I'll be happy. When I get a book deal, then I'll be happy. But the thing is even though those things do bring temporary happiness, like eating the cupcake, nothing wrong with eating the cupcake, right? Go eat the cupcake and enjoy it. Now I kind of want a cupcake. Getting the agent, getting the book deal, those are things to celebrate. They're great, but they are not going to solve all of your problems. They are this moment in time, and then time moves on, and now you have to think about the next book deal, and you think about the next book, and you think about the next phase of your life, because time marches on, right? We never get to be in this rest on your laurels kind of bucolic ending where we never again worry about money or politics or all of these things, right? Okay, so that's my 20 minutes. That's my sermon for the day. Uh, Seek out internal validation. Um, Give yourself a look in the mirror. You don't have to do it all at once, but piece by piece, find your own happiness that comes from inside, right? All right. Um, I hope you all have a great weekend. I hope that you chime in for No Kings at some point tomorrow. And I will talk to you all on Tuesday. You all take care, okay? Bye bye.